So, uh, when you think about classic Hong Kong cinema, you've got your action stars, your comedians, your serious actors. But today, we're doing a deep dive on someone who, well, really did it all, the legend, Yu Hua.
Hmm.
And we're aiming to go a bit beyond just the roles. Our mission is to sort of unpack the person, this incredibly versatile artist, based on what we've gathered.
Yeah, Yu Hua is a really fascinating figure, especially if you remember that whole Shaw Brothers era, maybe the 80s in particular. He wasn't just versatile, he was like a chameleon. He can just switch so seamlessly. What we found confirms this huge range, playing, say, a refined scholar like Jia Zhang in Dream of Red Mansions,
Right.
and then turning around to be this formidable general, sometimes totally good, sometimes convincingly evil.
That kind of range is pretty rare, isn't it? You see him as Tan Si Tong in The Tears of Yin Kai, the reformer, and then bam, he's the villain Wu Hua in Shu Lixiang. And we can't forget the comedy show, right? Him and Cheng Pei-pei were just iconic together.
Oh, absolutely. That show really boosted both their careers.
What struck me when we were preparing is that we're focusing on him, maybe not because he's, like, objectively the most famous, but because his actual life story, the choices he made, it's just really compelling. Almost cinematic, you could say.
It really is. And that story, well, it starts with some surprising turns even before he became known as an actor. The first big surprise is this hidden musical talent he had. I mean, his path in performing arts wasn't straightforward at all.
He was clearly talented from the start, though. Got accepted into the Peking Dance Academy really young, but he turned it down too young, and his dad wasn't keen on it.
Yeah, paternal objection, that was a big factor.
And then later, he finds out he was one of only 5 accepted into the Shanghai Dance Academy. Wild. But when it came to university, he actually got offers from both the Shanghai Conservatory of Music and the Shanghai Theater Academy.
And interestingly, he picked the Conservatory of Music. Apparently, it was because he had this deep, long-standing love for classical music. He already knew his way around a lot of instruments.
Wow. So the irony is huge there, right?
Yeah.
He picks music over theater.
And then becomes defined by acting for pretty much his whole life.
It's fascinating, though, how that musical background must have informed his acting. He wasn't just dabbling. He was a serious musician. Started with piano and accordion as a kid.
Right. And then in secondary school, it gets even more impressive. He's mastering the cello. And not just playing, he was directing the school's symphony orchestra. Think about that coordination, the timing.
Oh, definitely. Leading an orchestra, that's about presence, command, timing.
Yeah.
All things you need as an actor, especially in those demanding roles he played.
Exactly. That kind of control, that physical presence he had on screen, particularly in action roles, it must have been shaped by that early musical discipline.
Makes total sense. And it didn't stop there. University, he picks up the flute. And then later, his father-in-law was a famous Taiwanese Jinghu player. That's the Peking opera fiddle, right?
That's the one. So Yu Hua ends up getting this amazing grasp of folk music traditions, too. Just incredibly well-rounded musically.
And we even have a specific example of this crossing over, don't we? In the film The Northern Emperor, there's that scene where the emperor plays the pipa, the lute, and that was actually him playing.
Yes, perfectly executed by Yu Hua himself. Not faked. It just shows his level of commitment, using his actual skills to deepen the role. It wasn't just acting, it was immersion.
That underlying discipline, it just explains so much about his versatility and how natural he seemed on screen. And you mentioned his skills weren't just musical. He was athletic, too, good at various sports. That must have helped with the martial arts stuff.
No doubt. But despite that action hero image, there's this other role that he apparently joked was an unexpected success, which really marked a second peak in his career, the character He Feng. It was more of a family drama, a romance. Very different.
Right, He Feng. And it worked because it let him tap into something else, that sort of raw human emotional core.
Exactly. The character was described as being a bit like him, but also quite different. And what really hit home with audiences was this unexpected, really enduring love story in it. It just resonated.
It really proves his appeal wasn't just about the sword fights. It was his ability to connect on a deeper human level.
So we've seen the discipline in his craft. But now we need to look at his personal life because, well, that intensity wasn't just for the screen.
Absolutely. Let's shift gears because this is where things get pretty dramatic. That whole emotional triangle in his younger days, before he finally settled down, there was this intense 5-year involvement, almost an obsession, really, that he usually just wouldn't talk about.
Yeah, very guarded about it. Apparently, if people brought it up later, his reaction was basically, look, if you say so, fine, like just shutting it down. But it clearly took a massive toll. It led to a big falling out with Wang Yu, and Wang Yu wasn't known for fighting, right?
Right, known for being quite soft. So that conflict must have been serious.
Very serious. And the emotional impact on Yu Hua, apparently, it left him literally unable to get out of bed for 3 days straight.
Wow, 3 days. For a guy known for his control and discipline, that really tells you something about the devastation he must have felt. That's more than just heartbreak. It's like a physical collapse.
It seems like it was. And the suggestion is that this whole experience made him really wary, almost detached about the idea of marriage until he met his wife, Tien Ni. Like he'd been through the ringer emotionally.
And Cheng Pei-pei is right in the middle of this period. Their relationship during those 5 years, it's still kind of mysterious. Not a lot of solid details, just fragments. But there's that one quote from Cheng Pei-pei that's so telling. She apparently told him, "You are the only person in the world who treats me best." Just raw emotion there.
And his response is famous, isn't it? Kind of perfectly captures that guardedness, maybe even emotional avoidance. He just said, I am always good to everyone.
Oof, yeah, I'm good to everyone. That sounds like someone building walls after getting badly hurt by that earlier obsession. It avoids the specific commitment she seems to be asking for.
Exactly. Protecting himself, perhaps. And it's right around this time that Yi Shu comes into the picture.
Yi Shu, the reporter for Shaw Brothers. And she was going through her own stuff at the time, right? A marital Cold War, as it was put.
Right. So you have Yi Shu in turmoil and Yu Hua tangled up in this complicated back and forth with Cheng Pei-pei.
And they started hanging out, Yi Hua driving, Cheng Pei-pei often in the car too, which leads to that famous, almost movie-like moment, the night blindness story.
Yes, the night blindness. So the story goes, when they get to Yi Shu's place, she'd claim she couldn't see well in the dark and insist Yu Hua walk her upstairs.
Such a move. The famous actor kind of obliged to escort her because of this supposed condition. It's a very calculated step towards getting closer.
Definitely calculated. And years later, Cheng Pei-pei herself apparently questioned if Yi Shu really had night blindness or if it was just, a tactic.
Well, you wonder, don't you?
What's interesting is the interpretation that Yi Shu, being known for her pride, probably wouldn't have pulled a stunt like that unless she sensed some kind of opening, some vulnerability in how Yu Hua was with Cheng Pei-pei.
She saw a crack in the armor, maybe? Sensed he was hurting, maybe feeling betrayed from that earlier obsession?
And that vulnerability, yeah, maybe that created the opening for her to pursue him so relentlessly. It kind of shows how his emotional depth could also be a point of weakness then.
So he gets through all that drama, keeps building his career, and then finally, things seem to calm down. He finds some stability. Which brings us to Tien Ni.
Yes, meeting Tien Ni. And how they met is actually quite, normal compared to everything else. It was at the Singapore Food Festival. Their friends, Chua Lam and his wife, played matchmaker.
That's kind of sweet. And amazing that even though they both worked at Shaw Brothers, they didn't really know each other before that.
Apparently not. Just knew of each other. Maybe the timing was just right. After all the intensity, maybe something calmer was needed.
It sounds like it clicked pretty fast, though.
Yeah.
They fell in love, got married, had kids. Then they emigrated to Canada, and they stayed together for what, almost 40 years?
Yeah.
Still arguing, apparently, which sounds like a real lasting relationship.
Huh. Yeah, disagreements are part of it. But resilience really seems to be the word for that second half of his life. His birth name, YUE HUA, actually means happy lay. And he always called himself an optimist. There's that philosophy he had.
Oh, yeah, what was it? Something like, keep waiting and hoping.
While we keep waiting and hoping, everything will be fine in the end. If it is not fine yet, it is not the end. Which really speaks to bouncing back from that earlier turmoil, doesn't it?
Definitely. And that mindset must have been key when they made that big move to Canada. And Yi Hua actually retired, based on Tien Ni's advice.
That's right. A huge decision, showing how much he valued her input and maybe that stability she represented. TVB kept asking him to come back, apparently, for years. But it wasn't until the early 2000s that Tien Ni finally said, okay, gave him the green light to film again.
Well, thank goodness she did, because audiences then got to see him again in some really significant later roles. We got to appreciate that veteran charm once more, especially playing those kinds of roles linked to that classic El Maestro Borracho.
Right, which, just for anyone unfamiliar, is the Spanish title for the Jackie Chan classic, Drunken Master. He often played that wise, older master type later on. And yeah, there's a sense of gratitude towards Tien Ni for, as it was put, releasing him back to us.
It's a lovely way to think about it. his talent was like a gift she shared again. So looking back over everything, what really emerges is this picture of a man much deeper than just the action hero or the comedian. You've got this disciplined musician hiding in there.
Exactly. Who chose music first, but then used all that discipline to become this commanding actor?
And a man capable of really intense feelings, someone almost broken by that 5-year emotional storm.
Yeah, but who came through it with incredible resilience? Whether he was tackling a complex film role, needing musical skill, or navigating tricky personal stuff, the core seems to be this deep, sometimes messy, but very real human emotion, always with that ability to endure and somehow come back stronger.
This whole journey, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even for huge public figures, often the defining moments aren't the blockbusters, but those quieter choices made off-screen, like turning down dance for music or stepping away from it all on his wife's advice, only to return years later.
You see that split almost. The disciplined performer and the resilient, maybe even romantic soul underneath. So given all that talent, all those opportunities he had, what do you think was the most influential decision? Was it picking music school way back when? Or was it trusting Tien Ni and stepping back, which then allowed for that later comeback? Which one really shaped the second half of his life?
That's a tough one. Definitely something for you all to chew on. Which choice truly defined the later chapters of this versatile legend? We'll leave you with that thought until our next deep dive.